connected to YouTube Live. We'll give folks a few minutes to get on in here. We got currently 6:58 on Sunday, November 15th, 2020.
Hey Scott,
Hi, Joey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Um, Pretty well. I can't complain too much today, and that's unlike
Glad to
me.
hear. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Um, I really, I really think we could see some big changes if the Senate swings Democrat.
Well, yeah, because
Eh,
if what'll happen is they'll get a tie 48 to 48, plus then there's two libertarians. Um, Actually, there's got to be some other numbers because there's 100 altogether in the Senate,
Yes,
and then the vice president, which would be Kamala Harris, makes the final decision.
right.
So,
Um, and if the House passes the MORE Act, I think the election is like a day or two after that in Georgia, um, for those two remaining
for those
seats.
two seats, yeah, I don't know
Well,
when the is that when
I
it is.
think is it January or is it December?
I
I
would
don't
believe it'll be
remember.
December because the new Congress starts in January.
Right, right, okay.
So, yeah,
I
all
think that election is a couple of days after the MORE Act. So if that passes in the House, if um, that would be something else. That could be a real opportunity for the Senate to turn around and pass it if McConnell is no longer, what is it, president? No, speaker.
well,
Speaker.
he's the Senate Majority Leader,
Yeah,
and
that's it, majority leader.
and the
Yeah.
Majority Leader basically, whoever the majority is, kind of controls what bills make it to the floor, and also they head up the committees, so they get to decide what bills are going to be discussed in the committee, voted on in the committee, or if they're just going to be tabled and never be acted upon in that committee. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a domino effect. I hear a lot of times, and I may talk about this later, but I hear a lot of times people are saying, well, why didn't Obama pass, legalizing marijuana when he was president? Well, they only had control of both the House and the Senate for, I believe it was the first 2 years, was it, of his term, and after that, it was a Republican House and a
Right,
Democratic Senate. And
right,
from what I remember of that time, that Republican House just said, well, we're just not going to vote on those bills. We don't care about
mm-hmm,
those bills. So same kind of thing. They stacked up on that majority leader's desk, and that majority leader says, no, we're not going to look at that. And yeah, that's what stalls a lot of legislation and why things can't get done. Instead of,
right. That's why we have this gridlock of
hmm
nothing getting done.
yeah, they just
And
refuse. Whoever it is, sometimes refusing to look at the other person's legislation, and then you get nowhere. You have no place to even start to compromise. Um,
right, right. And that's
and
what I'll be honest. I'll be honest. Having one political party holding all the power is scary, but it's the only way we're going to accomplish anything. Otherwise, we're going to be in a stalemate because no one is willing to reach across the aisle and work with anyone else.
Well, we'll talk about this a little bit later as we move on here. I do want to officially start the meeting because we're at 7:05. So if you would bear with me here for a couple of minutes, and I will start with our disclaimer of first off, welcoming everybody that's here joining us on our Zoom meeting right now. We are being streamed live to YouTube. And also, hello to anybody that might be watching this later on YouTube. Our disclaimer is that all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness. They are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone any illegal behavior of any kind. So let me kind of close that one out here. And let's see where we're going to start. Um, I am going to start by just kind of mentioning that we're here to talk a little bit tonight about the announcement that it was by let me move this on my way here a little bit. Um, the House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer. Um, Basically, his quote is that the House will vote on the MORE Act to decriminalize cannabis and expunge convictions for nonviolent cannabis offenses that have prevented many Americans from getting jobs, applying for credit and loans, and accessing opportunities that make it possible to get ahead in our economy. This was in a letter that was published. That's the main quote that I pulled from that. They're looking at doing this in December again, as they called it, during the lame duck session, um, which, as much as my hopes are, boy, if it passes, it's my understanding when a new Congress starts, new bills with that new Congress number have to be submitted. So I believe the MORE Act would have to be resubmitted, similar to how the um, Compassionate Care Act needs to be submitted, either early submission in December or, once Congress or the legislature here in South Carolina starts in January 12th, I believe it is here. Um, and I believe that's the same thing. We get a new president. We're going to have basically new freshmen in a new Congress. So it's my understanding bills will need to be kind of carried over. They'll be resubmitted. Um, anyway, where we are currently, I'm going to share a screen here real quick. Whoop, cancel. I almost canceled the whole meeting. All right, there we go. Should be able to see that one. I'm going to drag this down a little for myself so I can see my tabs up here. Didn't drag it down low enough. And we're going to go ahead and visit Los Angeles NORML's page because they have kind of a real nice, clean, concise description of what the MORE Act covers. The MORE Act, otherwise known as the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, decriminalizes marijuana. Specifically, it removes marijuana from the list of scheduled substances under the Controlled Substances Act, which was implemented in like 1970 by my least favorite, President Richard M. Nixon. It eliminates criminal penalties for an individual who manufactures, distributes, or possesses marijuana. Now, again, that's federal level. Even if they did completely legalize at federal level, that doesn't mean states can't have their own laws. Uh, that would still need to be addressed down the line in South Carolina. The bill also covers, replaces statutory references to marijuana and marijuana with cannabis, um, requires the Bureau of Labor Statistics to regularly publish demographic data on cannabis business owners and employees, and trust or establishes a trust fund to support various programs and services for the individuals and businesses in communities impacted by the war on drugs. Imposes a 5% tax on cannabis products and requires revenues to be deposited into a trust fund or into the trust fund. Make small business administrations loans and services available to entities that are cannabis related legitimate businesses or service providers, prohibits the denial of federal public benefits to a person on the basis of certain cannabis related conduct and convictions, prohibits the denial of benefits and protections under immigration laws on the basis of cannabis related event, example, conduct, or a conviction, and establishes a process to expunge convictions and conduct sentencing review hearings related to federal cannabis offenses. Um, and basically, then there's a link to go and view the co-sponsors on that bill. And that is I'll share that link with you here in a moment. But how the parties break down at the federal level, I'm going to, oh, did I lose one? Ah, there it is. We have a total of 535 legislators at the federal level to represent us throughout the United States. There are 435 in the House. And right now, the breakdown of the 435 under this existing 116th Congress, we have 197 Republicans, 232 Democrats, one Libertarian, and there are 5 vacancies. um, the other 100 are in the Senate. The Senate, we have 53 Republicans currently, 47 Democrats, and 2 independents. And as many of you know, there is 2 seats that are up for, I guess, runoff elections in Georgia, which would put the 117th Congress at 48 Republicans, 48 Democrats, and I don't know if there's any vacancies in there or if they're all the others are independents. I don't know those numbers. But anyway, it puts the Republicans and Democrats at a tie, making the vice president, Democratic vice president, the final vote. In essence, making that party then the majority party in the Senate. And that's where, if any of you kind of tuned in earlier, Joey and I were talking about that a little bit. We do have a democratically controlled House, and that is where this vote for the MORE Act is going to be happening. Although it is a bipartisan bill, um, real quick here again on my screen, this is our House representatives for here in South Carolina. We have 2 Democratic representatives currently, and we have 5, excuse me, Republican representatives in the House currently. As many of you may already know, Joe Cunningham lost his race with Nancy Mace. That will put us in the next South Carolina, in the 117th congressional Congress, as we'll have 1 Democratic representative for our entire state in the House, and our Senate representatives are both Republican as well. So James Clyburn, for at least the next 2 years, would be our sole Democratic representative at a federal level. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close this one a moment, and we don't need, I don't think, that breakdown anymore. James Clyburn happens to be the representative of the South Carolina 6th Congressional District. He is a Democrat, and he's also the House Majority Whip. I had to go on and kind of look it up. I didn't really know what the Majority Whip does per se, but the House Majority Whip, or the Majority Whip's responsibilities include making sure that other party members are voting along party lines. Now, again, I mentioned that the MORE Act is a bipartisan bill. We have the House version here, sponsored by Representative Nadler out of New York. The Senate version here, which was sponsored by Senator Kamala Harris. I'm not sure how this stands at this point with her now being vice president, not a senator, or once she gets sworn in. But it's an across the table.
Scott, I'm not sure if it's just on my end, but it sounds like your audio's gone out.
Against this little button again on here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're a little quiet though.
Okay, that was really loud for me. I'm going to try that again. Okay, I'm going to try again here. Is that any better?
A little bit. You've got like it almost sounds like static. You might check and make sure that they're plugged in. It's plugged in completely.
Yeah, I got it going into a hub. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can at least hear you.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for now. Bear with me 1 second here. That looks a little better, at least on the settings. So hopefully that helps. I'll try and talk a little bit louder. And all right, I'm gonna get back to where we were. Trying to lean against my button again.
Yeah, that's no better, Scott. You're sounding jumbled now.
Okay, how's that sound?
Awesome.
Much better.
All right. Where was I? Okay. These are companion bills, one from the House, one from the Senate. They are both the MORE Act. The one being voted on that we're talking about in December is the House version of it, HR 3884. It currently has 118 co-sponsors to that bill. There are in the House 117 of those co-sponsors are Democratic, and one of them, which I believe is from California, is Republican. Let me look. No shit, Matt Gaetz from Florida. I didn't know that. He's a, never mind. Yeah, I follow him on Facebook. Entertaining, to say the least. But out of 435 representatives in the House and 230, what was the number? 232 of them being Democrats, we only have 117 co-sponsors, which is pretty good. Depending on how, we get a vote in on this, it should pass the House. And then we are in a lame duck session. Do we expect the 116th Congressional Senate to pick it up? No, we really don't. But I think it'll make a statement, and it gives it that push for the next Congress. It'll vote right through, I believe, pretty quickly. But what can we do? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these a moment. And the first thing I'm going to suggest you all to do is, next I'm going to switch screens. Go ahead and write your legislators. I'm going to, can I find the chat with all this other share screen open? More. There we go. I included the link to this into our newsletter earlier today that went out. And this basically is how to contact your legislators. So it's a little introduction into the MORE Act, and then comes down and says, start writing to your legislator. It'll ask you to enter your information, and that way it knows to pick your particular House representative, which I believe is the only list that this is going to. Yes, I know when I did it this afternoon, it only went to my House representatives. I don't think it's going to let me click in any further, but it's in essence asking them to sign in as a co-sponsor, sign on as a co-sponsor to this legislation and to vote on it, because it's monumental legislation. It is historic legislation, I must say. So what can we do here? Well, we can ask these guys to vote on it by going ahead and clicking on that link, going to this letter. It's going to go ahead and draft out a letter. It's going to give you the opportunity to edit that letter, make it personal to you, put in some information that maybe we wouldn't necessarily have to include, and plead with our House representatives to vote for this legislation. Do I think it's likely that the Republican House members will sign on as co-sponsors and vote for this legislation? Probably not. Am I surprised that Clyburn hasn't signed on to it yet? Kinda. I'm kind of surprised. Am I surprised Joe Cunningham hasn't signed on to it yet? No, I've been asking him for 2 years. So again, I sent out another to ask him again today. The folks at National asked me to, as a representative of a local chapter, draft a letter to Clyburn. Clyburn's District 6 borders Cunningham's District 1. not far inland from, the Charleston area, and I believe south. Where's my notes? So that's another thing I would ask everybody to do as well, would be to contact their, not only their local House representative, but also contact, and what I'm kind of doing in my letter, let's see if I can find it on my other screen here. Making mention that as the representative of the, oh, I haven't finished the section of it, but I'm sort of talking about his position as the majority whip, his responsibility for mobilizing votes within the party on major issues. This is a major issue. He should be helping to mobilize votes for this legislation. I'll be finishing my draft of this probably tomorrow morning, getting it out to national to just sort of proofread it for me, tweak it hopefully, because they do this a lot more than I do. But I don't think it would hurt to have a supporter in South Carolina, cannabis supporter in South Carolina, write to Representative Clyburn, ask him to rally the troops to support this important legislation, and to co-sponsor it himself. I think we have the strongest possibility of getting him to co-sponsor, to sign on, and to possibly do a little bit of troop rallying. Let me go back here. Cunningham, like I say, he may not. It doesn't hurt to ask. Again, this is a lame duck situation, so it's not really going to go all that far. He's not going to be a member of the 117th Congress. Nancy Mace will, and we'll kind of start the process over again and ask her to sign on as a co-sponsor, and to vote. At this point, we can ask him to vote. He's still a voting member of Congress, of the House. We can ask him to vote. Also, any one of the others that are, if no matter which party you are, you've got some folks you can discuss it with, and you can discuss it with all of them, because if you're in their district, they're your representative no matter what party you're with. I would have to go and look at the Smoke the Vote voters guide. I believe Tom Rice was somewhat pro cannabis. I think we have a possibility with him, and the others I'm not certain on. I'd have to go and look. And I may have spoken too far on Tom Rice. Matter of fact, I think while we have you here, I'm going to go do that real quick. Rice has a B rating. Ralph Norman has a C minus, which let's see if we can find out what Ralph has said. Well, he did vote no on the Blumenauer McClintock. He did vote yes on the safe banking. I wouldn't see him necessarily co-sponsoring the MORE Act. And then Tom Rice, B rating. I thought he had a relatively strong cannabis support rating. He has voted yes on the Safe Banking Act, Blumenauer McClintock, Blumenauer Farr for medical protection, and the McClintock Paulus, again for amendment to protect legalization in legalized states. So he's been a strong supporter. I think the only thing that would get him an A rating versus the B is sponsoring legislation, possibly co-sponsoring. I forget exactly how the grading works on federal. That's where I would kind of concentrate. And again, Cunningham does have a B rating. He's on a Veterans Committee. I'm not sure which committee it is offhand, but off the top of my head. He has voted yes on safe banking and the Blumauer McClintock Norton Amendment. Has not, I see no votes on any type of veteran-related cannabis research or access at this point. But those would probably be where I would kind of concentrate our efforts. It can't necessarily hurt if you're in the districts of the other representatives to ask them to support, to co-sponsor, to vote for it. I don't know where we'll get with it, but I think that's our best chance. Clyburn, Tom Rice, and Cunningham at least have stronger support than the other representatives. So that's where I would start. Like I said, I'm almost done drafting my letter to Clyburn as well. And I did send out, that was in the link, the, stop my share. In the chat, the link to go ahead and send it through the automated system over at Action Network. The other things that we did talk about at a meeting I had with National would be suggestions of, for us as an organization, basically sharing this link and some of the verbiage that we have to go with it repeatedly over the next couple of, till the vote. And also, the one thing I do want to make a point is if you've contacted your legislator before about this vote, this legislation had been scheduled to be voted on back in September. The House decided to postpone it. They didn't think they had enough support, or they were wishy-washy or whatever. So they did not move it forward at that time. And if you contacted your legislator at that time and it got postponed, contact them again. Matter of fact, I will probably, like I said, I just sent one off to Cunningham. I'll probably follow it up with another one in a week or so. I'm going to do it again. And that's what I'm going to ask everybody to do. Contact your legislators, especially your House level representatives. And if you've done it, do it again, and maybe even do it twice. We may, and I don't like to do this very often, we just sent out a newsletter today, but we will probably do another email blast on it. Our email list is growing. I'm loving it. I think we're 490 went out today. About 50 people plus opened it. One person unsubscribed so far. We don't get a lot of unsubscribes, but we do from time to time. And we try to only send out once a month. But I will be probably following up with another more act vote one in the near future, an action alert type thing. You'll be seeing it on our social media. And I'm going to ask anybody out there to write to the an editorial to the local newspaper, to a local news source. I haven't seen it for a while, but a station I used to watch when I lived in Pennsylvania on occasion would have a TV station would have an editorial person come in and comment on something. So contact our news outlets and then write an editorial to a local newspaper and just sort of share your wish that other people in the community would kind of get behind the MORE Act and how good it is for our communities, and see if we can get more people to contact our legislators. So again, I'll be probably trying to do that again later on this week for the local Post and Courier, to just a little description. I think I saw Kristen post something today, 240 characters. That may or may not include spaces. I'm not sure how they count that.
I think it's actually 250 words.
Words.
Not
Okay. That's even better. 240. Yep. I'm thinking Twitter. So 250 words. Yeah, it was write a letter to the editor type thing and ask other people, members of our community, share our information and ask them to contact their legislators and support this this vote. Those are the biggest suggestions and thoughts that I kind of have behind it. Any input, any thought, any sharing that y'all would like to share with me tonight?
Scott, one thing that I was wondering about, and I don't know if you have any information on this or not, but I noticed when you showed us just kind of like that breakdown of what the MORE Act was, one of the first things that was mentioned was changing the words marijuana or marijuana spelled with an H to cannabis. And I didn't know if you had any sort of insight on like why that was part of the MORE Act or anything along those lines. I know that we've talked in the past about like potential racism just in the word marijuana, but do you know if that's where that comes from?
I don't have any factual information on it, but yes, I'd be pretty sure that's exactly why it is. It's a made up demonized word. It is not an accurate word. The botanical name for the plant is cannabis. There's cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, cannabis ruderalis, and I learned of a fourth one somewhere out there. I don't know. But it's the cannabis family. And for accuracy, if nothing else, it should be changed. But yeah, I think a big part of it too is just the sort of the racial feeling of the words. They were made up. They were used to scare people back in the 30s when they were starting to outlaw cannabis I think it started probably again at municipal levels, went to state levels, eventually went to the federal level. Some places started making it illegal as early as the beginning of the 1930s. I don't know if it was as late as the late 20s. But then it was 37 when the Marijuana Stamp Act was enacted. And again, that was it was a tax ploy. More than anything, it was illegal if you didn't have this little stamp. And so, yes, the long answer to your question was, I'm pretty sure that's a big part of what's behind it, is the racism attached to the word, and for clarity and clarification, that it's the cannabis plant.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
They tried to, and I didn't notice it in that particular breakdown. It talked about establishing a process to expunge convictions and conduct sentencing reviews. I believe there's even a mechanism in there on funding it, which with a lot of legislation tends to be the problem, is they legislate stuff, but they never legislate the funding of that stuff. It never gets funded. The programs die because they're never funded.
Isn't that where that 5% tax is going though, to funding the people to run the government side and also help expunge records and help to get people's businesses up and running? I thought that's what that 5% said.
The trust supports various programs and services for individuals and businesses in communities impacted by the war on drugs. So generally low-income families and low-income communities. That's where that trust is sort of tied into, because they've been unfairly impacted by the war on drugs. And it says the next line is, it imposes that 5% tax on cannabis products and requires revenues to be deposited into the trust fund. Again, this was kind of a quick breakdown of it. I don't have. I don't see that in this particular section either, but I do remember talking about that somewhere. That I believe there's some funding mechanisms built into this and it may be tied into that same trust fund. That's one of the problems with briefs. It doesn't always give you all the details. But thank you for asking that, because that is a good point, and maybe tied into that. Teresa probably goes back to Harry Anslinger. Yeah, it does go back to Anslinger. Anslinger really did sort of
Screw us.
yes, yeah, and it's funny, when I lived in Pennsylvania, I didn't live that far from his grave, but I never went and spit on it. Let's see, the federal funds, so that money could go anywhere. Yeah, well, that's true. And I've probably mentioned it before, because we talk about Harry Anslinger, the Stamp Act of the 37, and what you don't hear a lot about, and I like to talk about, is Timothy Leary in 1967 got arrested for possession, and if you all know about Timothy Leary, he was the college professor that was sort of the LSD guru of the 60s, and he wasn't going to have an arrest for marijuana possession, so he took it to the Supreme Court and fought it all the way to the Supreme Court, and actually got it heard in the Supreme Court, which is freaking amazing to me. And they found that the Marijuana Stamp Act of 1937 was unconstitutional. He won his case for freaking simple possession of marijuana in California. I believe it was in California. And he was probably tripping balls to the wall. I don't know. At least that's my imagination of it. But that's what spurred then the Nixon administration to basically create the Controlled Substances Act, which went into effect in about 1970. Another real quick add-on to that, included in the Controlled Substances Act, there was they required a marijuana study be done during the first 2 years, within the first 2 years. And that was done by, I guess it's known as the Schaefer Commission, the Schaefer Report. And basically that report came back to Nixon and said, we should just decriminalize it and, take it off the list. And he blew up. Nixon blew up. This is probably why he's my least favorite president. He just blew up and said, "Well, you're fucking crazy. Let these drug addicts out there." So they passed it. They kept this on the Controlled Substances Act as one of the most dangerous drugs out there, up there with heroin. And they knew it wasn't dangerous. They knew it should be decriminalized. They just weren't having it. As John Ehrlichman later stated in an interview, I think it was 1994, we knew it wasn't dangerous, but if we could criminalize, or if we could associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin and criminalize both of them, we could raid their homes and we could demonize them nightly on the news and keep them from voting against us. So it's really a strong political move. And again, I don't see where the constitutionality of it is either. It's cannabis. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness is all wrapped up, to me anyway, in the word cannabis. So that's my rant and ramble about Teresa's comment about Anslinger. Jeez, Anslinger, Nixon, put them all together. I don't think I'm sharing any screens anymore. Good. So yeah, that's all I really have for you tonight, is to ask you to contact your House representatives. Use the link I shared. Share that link with everybody or every other cannabis group that you happen to visit or partake in. I'm in a few, but I don't always post to a lot of them, or I don't remember to share things like this to a lot of them. And the other thing is, if you do want to write a letter to Clyburn as the House Majority Whip, and ask him to, rally the troops. Come on, you're the Majority Whip. I had to Google a little bit because I had no idea what that was. He's basically second command under the Majority Leader, and probably one of our only chances of getting a South Carolinian to sign on to this bill in the next Congress. So please, 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 write. If you did already write, do it again. and then maybe give it a week or two and then do it again. Don't get obnoxious about it, but yeah, they'll know at least who's supporting. The big thing too, instead of just do it again, is share that link and share it again. Let people know that this is going to be how they're going to be heard, is right there, legislators in the House. This link will, after they put in their address, and it's got to be, I think, the address that they're of course registered to vote at. It will automatically select their legislators, send that letter to them. I know with mine it asks, do you want to be called Mr., your prefix and things like that. And I think it asks for a subject line on some of them, depending on who you're writing to. Some ask for more info than others. But that's all I have on that. If you do have any questions or comments, you can always reach me by email at lowcountrynormal@gmail.com. Visit our website at normalsc.org. Oh, with that mention, keep an eye on our website. We are, and I may I'll remind you all next week, but we will be starting our Black Friday special for our 2021 memberships coming up. Get your 2021 membership early and receive a big leaf sticker and a brand new NORML pin along with your membership, either level, basic or sustainer membership. So that's on our website, normlsc.org. Otherwise, coming up Tuesday, 7 p.m., we'll be back here online for our monthly NORML membership meeting, open meeting to the public, talking about reinitiating our petition collection for decriminalizing Charleston and Folly, and also talking about our normal business of the organization, looking for volunteers and board members. And again, that's Tuesday night. Check out our Facebook page for the link to that. Otherwise, I'll be back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. And I will get a subject of the week out there to you by Tuesday or Wednesday.
Scott,
Yes, Joey.
I wanted to mention, I sent a tweet to Senator Tom Davis, the
Okay.
state senator, asking him if he thought the cannabis legalization that had taken place in red states would impact our state legislators. And he answered me, which surprised me, and he said yes. He thought that it would make a difference to them. And he also added he is going to once again put forth medical legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And if that did not go through, he was going to submit a bill that would suggest, or use another word, a legal word, and create the opportunity for the citizens to vote on the issue of medical cannabis.
That would be interesting because South Carolina does not have the ability in their constitution, of the state constitution, to have the citizens vote at the state level on a voter initiative ballot. It would be interesting if you could get a bill to pass so that the voters could vote on one particular subject. But I would think that those in control might be afraid that that could open up floodgates in the future. I don't know. I do know he's planning on, resubmitting his legislation. I have not read an updated draft, if he's got an updated draft yet, and I haven't contacted him about it. But usually when I contact him about it, he'll send me a link to the, excuse me, to the active file, or not the active file, I guess a PDF file of it. And at that point, we can try and make suggestions for amendments before it's filed. Or, we can also make suggestions for amendments to it based on the way it was drafted for last session. But I'd rather see an updated draft. So that's kind of where I think we are. I do agree with him. If the Senate passes, it's going to have our state level legislators reevaluating their position. We're seeing more and more legislators, how do they call it, evolving their positions. Even Mitch McConnell, he's happy with hemp. He's a hemp hero out there. But don't get more than 0.3% of THC in that stuff, man, or he's going to freak out. So, yeah, we'll see. Oh, who is it now? Not before McConnell. Who was the Speaker of the House? Who's evolved and then got into the medical cannabis business as he left politics. John Boehner? I think that's who it was. Anyway, I digress. I'll get back into the conversation all over again with you. That's what I'm asking y'all to do this week, is to contact those legislators, let them know that we want them to sign on as co-sponsors, vote for the MORE Act when it comes up to vote in December. I'm going to call it for the moment and look for you all again next Sunday, 7 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me.